Hello and welcome to this OCR work plan video for students. During this video you will learn what work plans are, why work plans are needed, what one might look like, and what areas of a work plan might be given marks. Let's get started. Section 1. What is a work plan? Introduction to a work plan. A work plan is one of many planning tools a designer or project manager might use to help them to organise themselves. Different planning tools will be used in different ways. Now, the great thing about a work plan is it's real. It's what's used in the industry today. So if you can master these skills, then it means when you get out there in the big wide world and you get a job, you'll be able to do a work plan, dead easy. So any project manager will know that they have a number of planning tools up their sleeve to help them get organised at the start of a project. Firstly, of course, we have the work plan. Then after that, we have the diary or the planner. This could be printed diary or it could be one that's on the computer. Then we have to-do lists, and these can be written down task by task and ticked off once they're complete. We have production schedules, which are often used when filming. We have sticky notes. Everybody likes a post-it note to make a little notation on and stick somewhere really useful. We have a calendar. Again, this could be a calendar that's up on the wall, or it could be one that's on the computer and comes from an app. There are project management apps out there as well, many different types, showing many different ways of visualising a project. And finally, there are things like phone reminders. I'm sure that some of us use those already to remind us when to get up in the morning and when to do our homework task. Okay, so just have a little think. Imagine you're taking exams at the end of the school year. They might be mock exams or they might be the real thing. Which of these planning tools do you think would help you out to plan out your revision timetable? It might be across a few weeks, it might be a month's worth of revision. Which of the planning tools that are bullet pointed above do you think would be most useful to you? What might you need to know to put onto these planning tools to help you to plan out your different timetables across the days or the weeks? Write down your ideas now. You never know when it might come in handy. What does a good work plan contain? So let's start to break apart a work plan and look at component parts to see how they're all put together. First, we have tasks. These are the larger parts of each project. Typically, these could be the stages of pre-production, also known as planning, production, and review. Activities. An activity is a specific step or a document that needs to be completed within a task. So an example of this could be a pre-production or planning document, such as a mind map, a mood board, a storyboard. One task might be broken down into several activities. Milestones. A milestone is a significant event or a stage in a project. Completion of a task could be a milestone. Contingencies. A contingency is an extra amount of time or resources that we might need if circumstances change. This is, in effect, based on an estimate or maybe a sensible guess. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can have a good idea of what might go wrong and what we might need to do to put it right. Duration. The length of time that an activity will take to complete and the length of the project overall. This is usually shown on a timeline. Each activity will have a likely duration. This could be in half-hour slots or 1-hour slots, but they'll all add up to make the length of the project overall. Dependencies. This is a word that we use to describe the relationship an activity has with the one that's gone before it and the one after it. So the starting of one activity might depend on the one before it being completed. An example of this would be that a film could not be recorded until the storyboard and the script had been created. Dates. The specific date that each activity or task will need to start and finish. Remember though, that these could possibly overlap with each other. Section 2. Why do you need a work plan? Work plan uses. So it's all very well knowing how to put a work plan together with the component parts, but really we also need to know, why are they important? Why do we need one in the first place? And I think the thing to remember here is that it gives everybody who's working on a project an idea and an overview of what they need to do. It keeps everybody on task, it helps them to focus. It may help with keeping to deadlines. If everybody knows what the deadline is right at the very start, then hopefully they'll get the work done for that deadline. It might also help people space the work out so that it isn't rushed. So none of that late night, last minute working on a project, but instead chunking it up and working on it through the days, the weeks, the months to get the work done. It's good for people to be able to see what the other people in their company are working on within a project, to see maybe when they might be getting the next piece of work to do with the project. It's also a reminder of what activity or task comes next, so that it's not forgotten. It can also help to confirm the whole timeline with the client, so the client knows what's being done when and can actually ask if they want to see whether or not they're actually on time. And finally, it could be used at the end to aid project evaluation, to see whether contingencies were needed, to see whether or not everybody stuck to the time that they were given. Now, the work plans in each of the units on this course don't require you to assign activities to different people, because of course you're doing each piece of coursework for each unit on your own. But in media and IT industries, it is likely a work plan would have activities assigned to lots of different people because they will all have different job roles. Although you might be taking on the role of a graphic designer or a photographer, as well as a website designer, typically all of those different roles would be completed by different people. The overall point of a work plan is to help you to organise yourself and your time effectively so that you can meet the project deadlines. Although we've already said that in this qualification you'll be completing all of these roles, it's still really useful to know what the roles are and who would do them in the real world. So who might use a work plan? A work plan could be useful for a number of people and job roles. A client may have a copy of the work plan as an overview and to see if the project is meeting its agreed deadlines. A designer may use it to see when their role in the project is expected to start and finish. A camera person or games creator may use this to see how long they have to create the product. Actors or models may be given a copy so that they know the dates they need to be available for filming. Within industry, there are other people who might use a work plan, such as a health and safety officer and maybe a project manager, but these are not roles you need to know about in detail for this qualification, so don't worry too much about those. Now here's a question for you. There's a key group or groups of people who do not need to see a work plan, ever. Can you name this group? I'll give you a moment to think about it and I'll tell you the answer on the next slide. Before we start section 3, I'll just give you the answer to the question on the previous slide. That answer is target audience. So the target audience will never ever see any of the planning or pre-production work. They will only ever see the final product out there, or maybe the just slightly before final product because they will give some feedback on it. Section 3. What might a work plan look like? Okay, so far we've learnt about what the elements are of a work plan. We've learnt about who they're for, why they might be used, but now we really need to look at some examples of work plans so that we can see how to make them for ourselves. So here I have a brief. It's always good to work with a brief because then you can really practice those skills. I'm going to read the brief to you and then we'll look at what to do with this brief to turn it into a work plan. Did You Know Productions is a film production company specialising in short documentary films on a wide range of topics for BBC Three. They require a short documentary to be filmed and edited with the name Unwrapped. The documentary will look at aspects within a topic to gain a deeper understanding in a short time period. Topics to choose from: happiness unwrapped, bullying unwrapped, friendships unwrapped, schools unwrapped, technology unwrapped. The documentary will contain a mixture of acting, live interview footage, and sourced material. There will also be opportunities in this project for footage to be filmed on location. So, there was a lot of information in that brief. We learnt about target audience. We found out about the film production company. We found out a lot of information about the product as well. But what we now have to do is work out which of that information in there is related and useful for our work plan. So we need to work out the stages. So what we need to do is we need to go through all those different components of a work plan to see if we can take the information from the brief so that we can put it in. So we're looking for, what might our overall tasks be? What might our breakdown activities be? Where are the big milestones? What contingencies might we have to have? What's the duration of each of those activities? What are the dependencies? So which task has to be completed first? Which task relies on other tasks having been completed before it? And which one comes at the end? And also we need to think about, do we have any dates? Is it clear when we need to do this by? Now that's information that in the real coursework project you may well get from your teacher because it will depend on the timescale you've been given. A really good way of working out all of these things is to use an ideas generation tool. By that I mean something like a mind map. And that will help you to come up with all of the different stages. You could put work plan in the middle and you could come up with around the outside all the different stages, and from there the activities. You could have your node in the middle, your branches off, your subnodes could have the activities in, and then you could break down further all of those activities into sub-activities if you wanted to. First step, match the brief to the work plan components. So we've just seen all the components listed out on the previous slide. Now let's have a detailed explanation of how the content from the brief fits these components. Tasks. The tasks in this scenario are likely to be the pre-production, production and review stages. Activities. Pre-production activities could include interpreting the Did You Know Productions brief to work out what they require, working out who the audience is and therefore what they want, creating a storyboard, a script, character mind maps, location mood boards, deciding upon equipment needed and selecting actors and interviewees. Some pre-production activities could include recording actors and interviewees, a number of filming sessions in different locations, sourcing some extra footage, choosing appropriate footage, editing the film, adding sound and graphics if necessary, and exporting the film for the production company. Review tasks could include watching the short documentary in its entirety and then taking notes, looking back at that client brief, reviewing all elements of the film to see if they've worked or not, and thinking of creative ideas to develop the film further. Milestones. So in this project, a milestone is probably going to be at the end of the planning stage when you'll kind of go, whew, that's all done, now I can get on with filming. Then there'll be one at the end of the filming stage. There might be one at the end of the production stage, which is kind of once the editing has happened as well. And then there's probably one at the end of the evaluation stage, which is actually also the end of the whole project, isn't it? So that's a massive milestone. Contingencies. So some contingencies you could think about would be maybe the requirement of extra film equipment if some of it breaks, alternative locations in case it's raining or cold or too busy, and maybe extra time for filming. So if somebody can't make their allotted time, maybe you're going to have to set aside other time for filming. The duration, some of these activities look like they won't take very long at all. And then some of them could take several hours. Editing, for example, could take many hours. Exporting it could take minutes. And filming might need to happen over several different days at different times. Dependencies. Well, it's very, very clear that you can't film a documentary until the script has been completed and the storyboard has been produced, because otherwise you wouldn't know what you were filming. But editing could take place just after and alongside the filming. Once one part's been filmed, that could be edited while you're waiting for the next part to be filmed. Dates. Specific dates would relate to the time the project was released, but activities will likely take place over a number of weeks due to lesson timetables. You would get more information about those dates from your teacher if this was the unit and the brief you happened to be completing. A basic work plan in word processing software. A way of completing a clear and basic work plan would be to provide a bullet-pointed or maybe numbered list of activities that may have dates or durations included. So as you can see, here we've got a little excerpt from a Word document, and in there's a title, Activities to be Completed. Then we have planning, and within the planning section, it's numbered 1 to 5. So there are 5 different activities within the planning task. 1. Read through client brief and think of ideas. 1 hour. 2. Work out target audience using mind map. Half an hour. 3. Mood board of ideas. Half an hour. 4. Storyboard and script. 2 hours. 5. Choose equipment. Just 15 minutes. Please note, this is an extract, obviously not the full work plan. Although this method is clear and it does provide an outline for the project, it doesn't easily provide an opportunity to include some of the key requirements of a work plan, such as contingencies, dependencies, and dates. Now let's look at some actual work plans in action. Here we have first a work plan in word processing software. So a work plan completed in word processing software will more than likely make use of the table function. You would insert a table, you would choose your columns and your rows, and then you would populate those columns and rows with all the information from your mind map. So as you can see here, along the top we have the date, we have the hours, and we have contingency time. Those hours, that's basically the duration going on there. It's also showing the dependencies. We've got a description of the contingency and how much time is needed. It's not really enough just to put a tick for contingency time needed. We need to know what the contingency involves. That's really quite important. We've got our tasks there, and just note that this is only the first stage of production. This is the planning stage. And I think activities 1 to 7 break down the planning stage really effectively. We've got interpreting the brief, the target audience, the storyboard, the script, the possible interviewees, mind map, a mood board of locations, and then the decisions on the filming equipment to use as well. And at the end of that, we've got the milestone, and that's indicated by a green fill there. You could have a little key alongside that told everybody using this document exactly what all of the colours meant. So next in line, we have a work plan in Spreadsheet software. Now, putting a work plan into a spreadsheet does mean that it's editable in an easier fashion, and there are lots of other things we can do to that table, to that spreadsheet as we go along. Just note that this is an extract, so this is for the production stage. The contingency is included here, so we can see a contingency that's illustrated in yellow. So some extra time available there. And also using software like this enables the user to add, to delete, to hide columns or rows easily which makes it easier to look at sometimes. So again, we've got all of our tasks, our task at the top and all of our activities down the side there. And then we've got some dates of when they're going to run. And then we have all of our expected durations that are on our timeline there. Remember to save your work plan using a suitable file name. So spreadsheet software can be used as a completely blank workbook, but you could also use a template which is already on most spreadsheet software. So this one was called Track My Tasks, and it does exactly that. If you have a look, we've got a task list down the side to start with. Then we've got a start date and a due date. It's editable and interactive, so the completion percentage will go up as and when each task is done. There is a little column F there, that demonstrates when a task is done, so that at a glance you can see, have I finished this? There's also the contingency there, and instead of showing a dependency visually on a timeline, instead we have got some explanations. So it says dependent on, and what we see is that choosing actors is dependent on the planning being finished, and editing is dependent on the filming having started, not necessarily having finished, but having started. So this is another way that you could choose to demonstrate a work plan by using one of the templates that's on the software that you've already got in school. Again, remember to save your work plan using a suitable file name. Here's another smart little option, a Gantt chart that's been downloaded from the internet. Now there are lots and lots of Gantt charts available on the internet, particularly if you do a search of free Gantt chart. And you'll find some of them you have to sign up, but some of them you don't. You can literally just download it. This is what I did with this Gantt chart here. So if you were completing a coursework project, it would be up to you to find a Gantt chart from the internet that you're happy with and to use that. Now I thought this one was great because it contained lots and lots of information that I needed, and I could just download it straight to my spreadsheet software. Okay, so we've got here the task name. So in this one you can see I've included all of the stages of the project. So we've got the stages are in grey, so they are split up: first stage planning, second stage production, third stage evaluation, and then I've got finished project as well. They're grey because that's my milestone colour in this. Then we have a start date, we have a day of the month, we have an end date, and then we have a duration. Okay, now that's in days, but it can be changed to hours. And then it also says, well, how many did it take for me to complete it? And therefore, how many was left over? And that tells us, are you ahead of the project timings or are you behind the project timings? There's also the option for the contingency. And at the end, it says what percentage has been completed. And obviously, as you go along, they would all get completed to 100%, hopefully. And then what's really nice about this particular Gantt chart and lots of the other ones out there is it shows it visually on a timeline. So you can see in the two colours there how much time was allowed for it and how much time each task actually took. So it's a very clever way of keeping track of everything and also just being able to spot visually whether or not you are on track to complete this project on time. Just like the other examples, remember to save your work plan using a suitable file name. Now, you might find on your search for a Gantt chart on the internet that actually you come across some project management apps, some of which have to be downloaded and some of which are available online. And these are quite clever little things as well. Although they don't necessarily have a timeline showing everything, they are very interactive and you are able to edit them as you go along. So this particular one, I've just done phase 1, which is planning. And obviously we've got a section that says complete. That's the green section. They're the tasks that are complete and done. Okay, so it says interpret the did you know brief, work out the target audience requirements. Then we've got the tasks that are ready to complete, so still to be completed. And then below that, we've got the tasks that are actually in progress. So you can see what's currently being worked on, what's already been done, and what's still to do. So it's a different way of looking at it because lots of different people work in different ways. And these work plans will be effective to different people. So you might find that you've very much got a kind of project management app brain, and that's the way that you'd really like to focus on your work plan and set it out. Or you might find that you really get on with a spreadsheet. So it's up to you. And so long as you are including all of those different elements from tasks and milestones and contingencies and maybe dependencies, and you're showing a timeline somehow, then that's what's going to get you to the marks, not whether or not specifically you have chosen a spreadsheet. Section 4. Where do the marks come from in a work plan? Remember what a work plan is for. Okay, so by this point, we've begun to understand who a work plan is useful for, how they might use it, how they might put one together, but now it's time to look at where the marks might come from. Your work plan must be as near to a real, fully working plan as possible. It must cover all aspects of the creation of the product, so that includes the planning, the production, and the review stages. It must be clear and detailed. If there are brief or just generic tasks and activity names, then it's not going to provide enough detail on your own personal project. Tasks must be broken down into activities, and these should have some detail to them. These activities must be generated carefully so that they're very specific. Pick out the particular elements of your personal project that you're going to have to do and write those down as your activities. Ideally, milestones and dependencies will be clearly shown somehow. This might be through using colour or another type of visual illustration. Contingencies will be relevant and explained properly, not just a column that says contingency and doesn't explain what they're for. It must be realistic in duration. Section 5. How can I practice work plan skills? The best way to practice work plan skills is to try the different methods. Find anything you like as a brief. It could be what you're doing that day. It could be an exam timetable, an exam revision timetable. It could be a holiday plan. So if you're going to go somewhere for a week, plan out what you're going to do. It could be you're planning for somebody's birthday and you want to plan out how that's going to work. Be practicing it all the time. Why not do some practice at home for real life things? If that's not something you want to do, why not complete the worksheets? There are 3 worksheets there. Start with worksheet 1. Worksheet 1 is about choosing your stages and how you develop your skills at selecting content from the brief. Worksheet 2 is about placing information effectively into the work plan. And worksheet 3 gives you a brief to practice against, and you could create each of those work plans that we've given you as examples for that particular brief. Whatever you do, do lots of it. Have fun doing it. Experiment with those different types of work plan and choose what one suits you best. I hope you've enjoyed this OCR work plan video for students. Thank you for watching and listening.